Aisha Sterling, a powerful black woman, was stopped by the police for no apparent reason, but what the police officer didn't know was that the woman in front of him was not just an ordinary citizen, she was the director of the FBI. Thank you for being here. If you like this content, don't forget to share this story with your friends and family, and especially subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next meaningful stories. A sleek black SUV glides down a quiet suburban road. Aisha Sterling, 40, weary from a long day at the FBI in Washington, D.C., wanted nothing more than the quiet of home. The SUV hummed along when a cruiser's red and blue lights flashed behind her. A siren ordered her to pull over. She had obeyed every rule. Still, she eased to the curb, rolled down her window, and waited. Officer David Miller, tall and white, approached and peered into her car, studying her as if hunting for proof of guilt. "Security check," he said, blunt and unfriendly. "Is there a problem?" she asked, composed. He demanded registration and license. She handed them over. He retreated to his cruiser and returned minutes later. "I need your ID," he said, firmer. "My license is my ID," she replied. "You have what the law requires." He smirked. "You have a suspicious attitude. People like you don't drive cars like this without something to hide." Aisha felt the old heat of anger, but kept her voice level. "Explain what you find suspicious." He glanced at her jacket. "If you don't show ID, I can take you in." She tightened her hands on the wheel. "You have no lawful basis. Call your supervisor if you must. I know my rights." His face hardened. "Don't tell me how to do my job." He spat a slur thinly veiled as contempt. The wound was old and fresh at once. She inhaled, steadying herself. "You are abusing your authority. You will be held accountable." He raised his voice. "I'll arrest you." "For what?" she asked. "You have no charge." He advanced, hand near his holster. "Get out of the car. Put your hands where I can see them." She rose slowly, phone already in hand. She stepped out with the calm of someone who had negotiated with presidents and led investigations. "Officer Miller, call your supervisor," she said. "We will handle this properly." He barked orders. Neighbors peered from windows. Another cruiser's engine growled in the distance. The scene tightened. She had carried authority all her career, but none of that made her immune to indignity. Still, she refused to be reduced. "I will comply with lawful orders," she said. "I will not submit to tyranny." He drew his gun with a metallic slide. "Hands where I can see them." Her breath stayed even. She raised her palms, phone recording. "You are making a terrible choice," she said quietly. "This will ruin you." He stepped forward, eyes wild. Footsteps approached from behind him. For an instant, the world narrowed to the gun, the hands, and the silent recording light. Aisha considered options: legal, physical, public, and the calculation narrowed to a simple truth. Some dangers cannot be solved with papers and precedent. She looked at him with steady resolve. "Put it down and call your supervisor. End this." His finger trembled on the trigger. The alley of the night seemed to hold its breath. She thought of the headlines, the investigations she would launch if she survived this encounter, and the faces of people who trusted her to protect them. Then a shout cut through the hush. Someone from a porch, maybe a neighbor, maybe the driver of the approaching cruiser, and headlights sliced the darkness. Miller hesitated, a muscle jumping at his jaw. Aisha watched, every sense taut, waiting for the choice he would make. She pictured the ledger of justice she oversaw, cases built on procedure and courage. Her office was whirled away, but the rules she enforced pulsed in that phone and in the eyes of witnesses. If he fired, headlines and grief would follow. If she moved, she might trigger violence. If she stayed, she risked becoming a lesson for others. A distant television murmured from a porch. Ordinary life brushed the extraordinary danger like a careless hand. Miller's breath hitched. He looked like a man used to being obeyed, now unsteady before someone who would not cower. Aisha's instincts urged de-escalation. Soft words, controlled movements, time. Her conscience urged exposure. Let the recording speak, let procedure and law weigh on him. She measured consequences and still found only choices with costs. The silence thickened. Miller's finger trembled. Neighbors shifted. Headlights grew nearer. She held the camera steady and waited for the second that would decide everything. Then everything changed. David did not reply immediately. The gun in his hand trembled slightly, but his eyes still burned with anger and arrogance. Aisha calmly reached for her phone, pressed a button, and spoke clearly. "This is Aisha Sterling. I'm being pulled over by an abusive officer. I need the sheriff's presence immediately." The voice on the other end confirmed the call. David frowned. uncertainty flashing across his face. "Who are you calling? Do you think you can threaten me?" Aisha ignored him and provided her location. "Thanks. I'll be waiting." When she hung up, she looked him straight in the eyes. "The sheriff is on his way. I suggest you think carefully about your next move." For the first time, David hesitated. His grip on the gun loosened slightly, fear flickering in his expression. "What are you trying to pull?" he demanded. "This isn't a game. Officer Miller," Aisha said evenly. "You'll answer for your actions." David clenched his jaw but stayed silent. Minutes later, the whir of sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights painted the quiet stretch of Willow Creek Lane. A patrol cruiser stopped, and Sheriff Robert Vance, a seasoned man with 30 years of experience, stepped out briskly. His eyes widened in shock as he saw Miller's gun still aimed at the unarmed woman. "Miller," he barked, his voice sharp and commanding. "Lower your weapon now. What the hell are you doing?" David turned quickly, pale and stammering. "Sir, I was doing my job." She refused to show ID and was being uncooperative. Aisha's voice remained calm but firm. "Sheriff Vance, thank you for coming. I believe we need to address this officer's misconduct immediately." Vance looked at her and froze for a moment. Recognition dawned in his eyes. "Director Sterling?" David blinked in confusion. "Director Sterling? You mean?" Aisha didn't flinch. "Yes, I'm Aisha Sterling, director of the FBI. This officer insulted me, abused his authority, and pointed a gun at me without cause." The blood drained from David's face. Sweat rolled down his temples as he stuttered. I didn't know. You didn't care." Aisha interrupted sharply. "I showed you my vehicle registration, but you kept demanding ID without justification. When I questioned your motive, you made racially charged comments and drew your weapon." David's lips trembled as he lowered his gaze. The night air grew thick with tension. Sheriff Vance exhaled slowly, clearly fighting anger. "Miller, do you realize the magnitude of what you've done? You violated department policy and possibly the law." "Sir," David said weakly, "I was following procedure." "No," Vance snapped. "You were following prejudice." He turned away briefly, regaining composure. "Return to the station and write a full report." "Now." David hesitated, then silently walked back to his car, eyes down, and drove off. When he was gone, Vance turned to Aisha, his tone softened. "Director Sterling, I deeply apologize. This is unacceptable. I'll ensure a full investigation." Aisha nodded, but her expression remained cold. "This isn't just about me, Sheriff. It's about accountability. People like him tarnish the badge and destroy trust." "You're right," Vance admitted quietly. "Would you like to file a formal complaint?" "Absolutely," she said. "But I want this documented thoroughly. This isn't an isolated issue, it's systemic." Vance gave a solemn nod. "I'll personally oversee the investigation. You have my word." Aisha's voice grew steadier, though her eyes were still burning with controlled anger. "Good. I've spent my life upholding justice. I won't stand by while the people sworn to protect abuse their power." "You'll have my full cooperation," Vance promised. "No one is above the law. Not in my department." Aisha exhaled deeply, her posture easing slightly. "Thank you, Sheriff. I believe true change starts with leaders who dare to do what's right." Vance nodded firmly. "Then tonight will be that start." For a moment, the two stood in silence under the flashing lights. The night air was cool, carrying the faint hum of the distant highway. Finally, Aisha gave a small nod of appreciation and walked to her car. She opened the door, paused, and glanced back at Vance. "Make sure this doesn't get buried," she said softly. "Too many stories like this already have." "It won't," he replied with conviction. "Not while I'm sheriff." Aisha entered her car and started the engine. She didn't drive off immediately. Her hands rested on the wheel as her thoughts lingered on what had just happened. The humiliation, the danger, and the ugly truth it revealed. But beneath the anger was resolve. She had survived worse, and she had the power to fight this. As the engine purred, she looked toward the horizon. The flashing lights behind her faded in the rearview mirror as she drove away, her mind already mapping the steps ahead. Press conferences, disciplinary reviews, policy reforms. This night would not be forgotten. Aisha Sterling wasn't just defending herself. She was igniting a movement. By the time her car disappeared into the darkness, one thing was clear. Justice had only begun to speak, and Aisha would make sure it roared.